After completing my 10th class exams in 1979, my father suggested that I go and help my father's uncle and learn astrology. Mathematics being my favorite subject, I learned the calculations. My grandfather taught me how to calculate the inclinations of each planet and how to calculate the lagna and the meridian center MC. And he gave me some birth charts to draw. Thus, I learned how to draw the birth charts first and showed interest in predictions. So my grandfather told me some predictions, some of the tips that he usually uses for predictions, and after learning those tips I documented some of them. I verified with my father. While my father and my grandfather have laid the foundation for me to get interested in astrology, for almost a decade or 2 decades, I didn't show any interest.
Welcome to Shasikara's Astrological series. As usual, for the past 6 to 7 years, I am posting a number of videos in my YouTube channel, and which are free for most of them. And apart from that, earlier to that, I did post some scribed articles in the scribed website, and which I came to know that people are getting charged for downloading my articles. Recently, I started a website www.karraastrology.com. I'll repeat again www.karraastrology. Karra Astrology is all one word. Karraastrology.com is my new website, and most of the information pertaining to me, whether it is in the articles in the WordPress or in Scribd or the recent YouTube presentations that had been posted in my channel, all of those are available in my website. And apart from that, I started a new paid consultation, and the payments will be when I tell my what is my fees. The payment should be paid either to an orphanage in India. I will provide the address for that payment details, or to the homeless center here in New Jersey. So for those who are residing in India, they will be paying to an orphanage in Hyderabad, and for those who are residing outside India, they have to pay to a homeless center here in New Jersey. So if you are interested to get paid consultation, please visit my website and click the contact me button, and then provide all the information over there. To the extent possible, I will be responding at the most within 3 to 5 business days. Thank you very much. I'm hoping that you will like my presentations, and this is some presentation which I'm going to post it within as soon as I can.
Welcome to Shasikara's Astrological series. This is the presentation about multiple marriages. Earlier last year, I think in 2019 or 2020, I did had one case study about the famous TV artist here in United States. His name is Larry King. He had multiple marriages, and I had done an astrological analysis identifying what is the astrological reasoning for a native to have multiple marriages. This is my second case study. This is about the famous Bollywood actor Aamir Khan, and in this presentation I'm going to analyze his birth chart, who had 2 marriages, and see the predict if there is a possibility for a third marriage or not. I'm hoping that you will like this presentation too. Thank you.
Welcome to Shasikara's Astrological series. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about one of the famous Bollywood actor, Aamir Khan. Recently, I came to know that he is getting divorced. This was in July 2021, and this was his second divorce. The first marriage was happened somewhere in 2000, sorry, got divorced somewhere in 2002, and then he got married in 2005, and he's getting divorced in 2021. This is the second divorce. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to analyze his birth chart based upon the birth details that I got from Astro Data Bank, and try to, from an astrological perspective, what is the reason for this particular native to get married twice and again get divorced, and will there be a third marriage for this particular native? This particular analysis is complete purely for educational purposes only. Please do consider this presentation for for improving your astrological skills, or just to know what are the method how I do the analysis. Apart from that, there's no other reason for me to provide this particular presentation. I'm hoping that you will like this presentation. Thank you and enjoy the presentation. Okay, now let me start analyzing the D1 chart. The very first thing that I do when I look at the D1 chart is, are there any planets that are in Rasa Sandhi? The very first thing. Fortunately, for this particular native, there are no planets in Rasi Sandhi. The date of birth was 14th March 1965, and according to Astro Data Bank, the time of birth is 6:15 a.m. and the place of birth is Mumbai, India. So the Lagna is Aquarius. That means the Lagna Lord is Shani, Saturn. So let's start with the planet's position. In the first house, that means in Aquarius, I noticed Saturn, the first and the 12th house lord Saturn is residing. The 7th house lord Sun is residing. The bitter enemy to Saturn is Sun. This is the 7th house lord Sun, and the Sun is residing in the enemy's house. And then Venus is the 4th and the 9th house lord. 4th house is Sukasthanamo and the 9th house is Dharmasthanamo. So Venus, the Lord, Venus is residing in the first house. So the very first thing, as soon as I saw the chart, the very first thing that I noticed is the Sukhasthanadipati and the Dharmasthanadipati, Venus, is co-joined with a natural malefic Saturn, who is the Lord of the first house, Dhanusthanamo, and the 12th house. 12th house deals with pleasures of bed. And then the 7th house lord is Sun, the bitter enemy to Saturn, and Sun is residing in the house owned by Saturn. So the 7th house got spoiled because it is co-joined with its bitter enemy, who is a malefic planet. And so the 7th house lord got spoiled. Now Saturn is having a direct aspect on the 7th house too. So the 7th house is thoroughly spoiled just by looking at this, the very first house. And then the 4th house is as spoiled because 4th house is Sukhasthanama, or home life environment, that got spoiled because the Lord is residing with a malefic planet, and that's nothing but Saturn. And then the 9th house Dharmasthanama again got spoiled. So this tells you that this particular native, irrespective of whom the native gets married or how many times the native gets married, one thing is assured is that the marital life will not be, the marital relationship will not be a long duration, will not be for a longer duration. The home life environment will not be happy, and the chances of going against the native, going against the dharma is very high. That's exactly what you have seen here. Being a Muslim, he got intercaste, inter-religion marriage, married to both the first and the second marriage. Both the girls are from a different religion, not the religion that he belongs to. That is going against the dharma as per his religion. He went against the dharma. That's exactly what the 9th house lord is telling, because the 9th house lord Dharma Sthanadipati Venus is co-joined with a malefic. And then both the marriages were ended up in divorce. That tells you that the Sukhasthanamu got spoiled, and the 7th house lord, because of the 7th house lord being Sun, who is a bitter enemy to a Saturn and residing with Saturn, so that got spoiled. So this tells you that the native whether he marries the third time, fourth time, fifth time, whatever it is, it will not be the marital life will not be happy. The home life environment will not be happy, will not be so-called happy. We'll always have fluctuations, which I'm going to talk when I come to the fourth house. And then let's look at the second house. The second house, the most important here is in the second house from Rashi Lagna, the second house, Mercury is residing in the second house. Mercury is the lord of 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth house lord and the eighth house lord. The fifth and the eighth house lord Mercury is residing in the second house, which is the Kutumba Sthana. Okay, and the second house, remember there's a Divrced Sarla Paddhati rule that states that wherever Saturn resides, he spoils the house, the bhava of the house next to his residence. Here Saturn is residing in the first house, so for sure he's going to spoil the bhava of the second house. That means the native will have either issues pertaining to Kutumba Sthanamo or issues pertaining to Dhanasthanamo. We don't know which one the native is having issues, but in his lifetime, these are the one of these two, not both. Either of one will have the native will be facing issues either with the Kutumba Sthanamo or the Dhanasthanamo. And since Mercury, the eighth house lord, by default, functionally, Mercury, the eighth house lord is considered to be a malefic lord. So the eighth house lord, Mercury, is residing in the second house. So a malefic lord is residing in the second house, and that is the house which the Saturn has been spoiling it or spoiled it. So naturally, the second house got spoiled, which is the Kutumba Sthanamo or Dhanasthanamo, which you can see that sometime, not only that the marital life, the fourth house and the ninth house got spoiled and the seventh house had an issue. Now, even the second house also got spoiled. Now, that's the reason, another reason why I said that whether it is a third marriage or fourth or fifth marriage, the marital life will always be dynamic for this particular native. Now, let's go and look at the third house. In the third house, Jupiter is residing. Jupiter is the second house, 11th and the second house lord. 11th house is Labhasthanamo, and 11th house is also called as house of desires. Labhasthanamo, I think. Yeah. House of desires, and the second house is the Kutumba Sthanamo. So the Kutumba Sthanadipati and the house of lord for the house of desires is Jupiter, is residing in the third house, and Saturn's third aspect is already on that particular lord, Jupiter. So now the Saturn has spoiled the second house. He's looking at the second house lord too. So the second house is thoroughly spoiled. Right now, until this point, the first house lord is spoiled, the seventh house. The first house lord created a dynamic in the second house. The first house lord spoiled the fourth and the ninth house lord. And the first house lord is aspecting the second and the 11th house lord. This itself is enough, but let's go further down. In the fourth house. In the fourth house, Rahu is residing. So there is a particular belief that, or a rule, that wherever Rahu stays, he creates dynamic in that particular house. So the fourth house is Kutumba Sthana, is Sukhasthanamo, or home life environment. So already the fourth house lord is co-joined with natural malefic Saturn. So the fourth lord got spoiled. Now Rahu is residing in the fourth house, and now Rahu has created a dynamic for the fourth house, Sukhasthanamo. That's another reason why his home life environment is always volatile, and there is no steady, smooth, happy home life environment for this particular native. Then comes the fifth house lord is Mercury, I already told you. And there comes the sixth house lord. The sixth house lord is Moon. Moon is mind. And the sixth house lord is, sixth house deals with house of separation. And the lord is residing in its own house, the house of separation or the divorce. That mentality to get divorced is very high for this particular native because the lord is residing in his own house. And when you look from the Chandra Lagna, the seventh house lord is again Saturn. Seventh and eighth house lord is again Saturn. And here from Rashi Lagna, the Saturn is looking at the seventh house. So the separation, the thought of getting separated is very strong in this particular native's mind. And so that's another reason why a dynamic home life environment, a unstable kutumba sthanam or a kutumbam sthanamu, and a dynamic dharmasthanamu, and a spoiled seventh house lord or the seventh house from Rashi Lagna, and the same goes from the Chandra Lagna. So this tells you that this particular native's marital life is not at all stable, irrespective of how many marriages the native have. And then the last and very important thing that we have to keep in mind here is the position of Mars in the seventh house. Mars is a very violent and aggressive planet by default. Now, Mars is residing in the seventh house from Rashi Lagna. That means it is having a direct aspect. We'll take from Mars is directly aspecting the first house, where the first and 12th house Lord Saturn is residing, not a good sign. The seventh house Lord Sun is residing, not a good sign. The fourth and ninth house Lord Venus is residing, not a good sign. As if that is not sufficient, Mars' eighth aspect is on the second house from Rashi Lagna, where the eighth house Lord Mercury and the fifth house Lord Mercury is residing. So overall, just by looking at this chart, just from Rashi Lagna and Chandra Lagna itself, and looking at the house lords, all those, and their aspects, it's clearly understandable that this particular native's marital life will always be dynamic, irrespective of how much he tries to adjust with it. And because the marital life is very dynamic, and because the native's mind is always, or most of the time, turn towards getting separated, the chances are extremely high for this particular native to have multiple marriages. Already he had 2 marriages and 2 divorces. This is in July 2021. So I wouldn't be surprised if the native gets a third time married for the third time and gets divorced for the third time too. I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm sure this keeps going on at least for some more time. And that's what I'm going to see from Vimshatari Dasa system. I'm going to see how, if there is a third marriage for this particular native, what is the possibility from an astrological perspective, how long could that marriage last? And I'm hoping that it lasts at least for the enough time until the native is like. Now that I had explained the previous 2 marriages, getting married and getting divorced, and I also explained from an astrological perspective why this particular native's marital life will always be dynamic, let me go and, with the assumption that the native gets married for the third time, how would it be? Let me go and try to see it from a Vimsotari Dasa perspective. Keep in mind, this is just an astrological analysis, and please do not, I owe no responsibility if anybody has considered this information and had taken any major decisions. I owe no responsibility for that. This is purely astrological instructional video, and whatever I am telling it is based on to the best of my astrological knowledge. Now coming back, now that I'm done with my disclaimer, coming back to the future of this particular native. First, the Vimsotari Dasa. Vimsotari Dasa system, Moon Mahadasa is all the way till September of 2029. That means starting September of 2019, for 10 years, the native is going to have the Moon Mahadasa. Moon means, first of all, Moon is mind. So the native, and Moon owns the 6th house. Since Moon owns the 6th house, the house of separation, the native's mind is always in a subconscious state, always thinks about getting separated. Now the question comes, is getting separated from what? Is we are not worried at this point. Just the concept is the native's mind is always thinks of getting separated. That can be anything. So now let's start looking at the moon Mahadasa. Moon is in its own house. Its sixth direct aspect is on the 12th house from Rashi Lagna, which is the pleasures of bed. So getting separated will be is directly related to the pleasures of bed of destiny. From Rashi Lagna is the destiny. So the getting separated from the pleasures of bed is destiny, because the moon is having a direct aspect on that house from Rashi Lagna. And from Chandra Lagna, that is the 7th house, and the 7th house lord is Saturn, a malefic, who is residing in the 8th house from Chandra Lagna. So what is needed here is to look at the transit planets and see what can happen. Now, when you look at transit Saturn, this is July 2021. Transit Saturn is going to stay in Capricorn, which is the 7th house from Chandra Lagna, until January of 2023. So, just by looking at the transit Saturn position, I can clearly say that the possibility for this particular native is extremely high for this native to get married one more time before January 2023. This is based on the transit Saturn position. Now, let's go. Where is transit Jupiter? Transit Jupiter is in Capricorn right now, but after some time, like somewhere in September or October of 2021, it goes to Aquarius. So that is the first house. So the second house lord Jupiter is residing in the first house, co-joined with the first and the 12th house lord Saturn, co-joined with the 7th house lord Sun, co-joined with the 4th and the 9th house lord Venus. So the first house, so Jupiter, which is a benefic planet in general, who is the second house lord and the house of desires, is now in the sense somewhere in September or of October of 2021, when it enters into Aquarius, it's going to do a very big job. So the chances are extremely, extremely high for this particular native to get married one more time. The third time, probably after October of 2021. I would say I should say it as September, but I want to take one extra because of the Rashi Lagna. Because of Jupiter being in the Rasi Sandhi, I would take 30 days more and say somewhere in October of 2021 and add 1 year to it. So from October 2021 till October of 2022, the native is going to get remarried. Third time, you will be getting married. And that is another reason is because when Jupiter is there until October of 2022 in Aquarius, the first house, transit Saturn is still going to be in Capricorn until January of 2023. So the transit Saturn and transit Jupiter, these two planets are going to make the native extremely strong mentally to get married one more time. And because the moon Mahadasa is running, moon is the mind. So these two natives will put so much pressure on the native to get married one more time after October 2021 and before October of 2022. Now let's go and look at in Vimsotari Dasa. Does the Dasa system support it? The Mahadasa is moon. So the Mahadasa is supporting this particular native to get married, and even if first of all, we'll assume that the Mahadasa supports him to get married. Now in October of 2021, oh great, Rahu Antaradasa starts in February of 2021. It goes all the way till August of 2022. Rahu, again, one more time, Rahu is residing in the 4th house. I think transit Rahu is going to be in co-joining with natal Rahu during this period. Yes. So transit Rahu co-joined with natal Rahu in the 4th house. And so the native might get inclined towards getting married before August of 2022 when the Rahu Antaradasa gets done. But then the question comes is, how strong is this marital life going to be? Basically, I'm not comfortable in saying that whatever the native wants to, if the native wants to get married to the same religion, that means not, if the native does not want to go against the dharma, that means marrying the girl from the same religion, no intercaste, no interreligion marriage, then the chances are very, very low for the native to do that. If the native has decided to get married someone that belongs to the same religion or same caste, then I don't think it will be stable. Some sorts of hiccups comes up before August 2022, which is, and I don't know how the things goes before of August of 2022. Until that point, I would like to take with a grain of salt and say that the chances for this particular native to marry someone that belongs to the same religion or same caste is very, very minimal. And if it does it also, it's not a cakewalk. The native has to go through a lot of hurdles, a lot of hiccups, troubles, all of things before August 2022 to marry someone from the same religion or same caste. Now that question comes is, how long is, if the native got married to the same religion or same caste girl, how long can it stand? Whether if the native first of all, the chances are minimal for it to happen. So I will not be surprised if the native announces that he is going to marry someone that does not belong to his caste or his religion. I will not be surprised. And I will be extremely shocked if the native says that he is marrying someone belonging to his religion and the native gets married before August of 2022. I'll be extremely shocked because transit Rahu and natal Rahu are both co-joined in the 4th house from Rashi Lagna and the 11th house from Chandra Lagna. 4th house is Sukhasthanama and 11th house is house of desires. The Chandra Mahadasa is Moon Mahadasa running, Rahu Antaradasa is running, and transit Saturn is in the 7th house from Chandra Lagna and the 12th house from Rashi Lagna. Transit Jupiter is in the 1st house from Rashi Lagna and the 8th house from Chandra Lagna. Look at it. From Chandra Lagna, Jupiter is the Dharmasthana Adhipati, the 9th house lord. And the 6th house lord too, separation, house of separation lord too is Jupiter. And that guy, transit Jupiter, is residing in the 8th house from Chandra Lagna. It's extremely, extremely complicated. And it would be nice if the native postpones his idea of getting married until August 2022. This is purely my opinion based upon the astrological analysis that I am doing with respect to the birth chart, birth details that were provided in Wikipedia. And if the birth details are wrong, or if somebody claims that the birth detail that is provided in Wikipedia is wrong, then the analysis will be completely different. To the best of my astrological knowledge, I would say that the native will be more inclined to have a third marriage. And if the native can hold his desires and control his mind, I would be highly recommend this particular native not to get married until August of 2022. Let's wait and see what exactly is going to happen from now. This is July 2021. From now till August of 2022, which is approximately 13 months. Let me wait and see what exactly is going to happen in this particular native's life. And we have the media to give us the latest updates whenever there is a major change in his life. Thank you for watching my video, and I'm hoping that my astrological analysis helped you to get more knowledge about how the way I look at the chart and the way how I analyze it, the past events, and how I predict the future events. Thank you once again. Finally, let me conclude this presentation. As I explained earlier, with the moon Mahadasa ending, starting in 2019 and ending in 2029, moon being the 6th house lord, and moon indicates the native's mind. I would say that based upon the way the natal moon got afflicted, uh, at least until January of 2023, natal moon will get afflicted due to a direct aspect from transit Saturn. So until January 2023, the native's mind will be very unstable, flickery, not sure what to do, and this type of instability in the thoughts, and not sure clearly figuring it out what is the exact way the native wants to do, especially when it comes to getting remarried or having a relationship with family members or home life environment. And if the native accidentally or for some other any reason native wants to follow the dharma as per his religion and wants to marry a girl that belongs to his religion and follows his religious dharma, then that possibility of the native getting a girl married is uh, not a cakewalk. There will be a lot of hurdles, especially with transit Rahu. As long as transit Rahu resides in the 4th house from his Rashi Lagna, that then the home life environment will be dynamic. So naturally, him choosing a girl to marry might not be acceptable from other parts of his family members, and that might create some disturbances in his home life environment. Finally, what I want to tell here is that in January of 2023, transit Saturn enters Aquarius. That means it's exactly the 8th house from natal moon for this particular native. That means the native's Ashtama Shani is about to start. This is the second time the native is getting his Ashtama Shani. The first time was somewhere in I should say between 1990 and 1992 it started, and now this after 29 to 30 years later it started again. Actually it's 1994 to 1996, and again after 30 years it's starting now for this particular native. So if the native has taken any decision of getting married or has been married before December 2022, then during this Ashtama Shani period, the chances are extremely high for the native to have some troubled family environment and some misunderstandings with the spouse, and I will not be surprised during this Ashtama Shani period if the native either gets separated again or stays away from his spouse. Overall, as I said earlier, according to Vimshottari Dasa system, it's not a right choice to take a decision before October of 2022 whether to get married or not. Number one. Number two, it's not a right choice for the native to get married before December 2022. And the most important thing is, it's not the right choice for the native to think about marriage or having a relationship, especially with Ashtama Shani coming very soon in January of 2023. Thank you very much for watching this video presentation. I would like to give the disclaimer one more time. This presentation is exclusively for educational purposes only. Thank you very much.